Our readings today are important, pivotal moments. For our patriarchal father, Jacob, this is an important transition. If you look at those chapters of Genesis, and I certainly encourage you to go back and look at the text, Jacob, who has, as we reflected on yesterday, has left his father's house, running from his brother Esau for very good reasons, and has gone to labor under his uncle, his mother Rebekah's brother, and there face many of his own difficulties. I think many of you remember the story that he thinks he's going to acquire one wife, and then he is cheated out of that wife and has to labor for many more years until he acquires that first wife that he desired as a second wife. In those years, his difficulties are many. His uncle and family are not necessarily easy for Jacob to handle. But as you read those words, you kind of chuckle to yourself, at least I do. After all, Jacob, you had it coming to you. Didn't you know it? Life isn't going to be easy for you. But we see him now as he leaves his uncle and carries with him his family, which is now abundant, his possessions, which are likewise abundant, and is about to return to what you and I called the Promised Land. These moments are very important to Jacob. Remember, he has to reckon with his brother, who is still around and still a man of influence and power. So he is anticipating his encounter with his brother, which comes in the very next chapter from what we just listened to. This encounter, this mystical encounter, which takes place, Jacob alone, changes his life. It doesn't change him just in the obvious. Those closing words to that first reading always kind of catch people. What's this about the hip and the nerve and not eating that nerve? And now, it simply is one way of speaking about a permanent reminder being left to Jacob that something is new, something has changed. Most importantly, his name is changed. And as you know in the scriptures, when a name is changed, it isn't a little thing. It has to do with a new vocation, a new ministry. Life for Jacob is never going to be the same. As Jacob now returns, deals with his brother, he is in fact going to be a new man, and God is going to care for him. The providence of God is going to be very evident, as we'll hear in the readings that will follow in the days to come. Jacob, our father in faith, important, a man who has been changed, a new reality. Our gospel, likewise, very important, pivotal moment in Matthew's gospel. Part of why we always need to go back to the text is that each of the evangelists presents the good news in a different way. Many have said that Matthew is the most ordered and most eloquent of all the gospel writers. I'll leave that for scholars to contend over. But the reality is that he presents the good news of our Lord in a way that is distinct to his audience. He's writing to a Jewish Christian audience, and he actually divides his gospel presentation up into 5 major discourses. 5. For anyone with a Jewish sensibility, that 5, of course, reminds us of the 5 books of the Torah. This way of looking at reality and seeing that there are certain presentations that build upon one another. We listened to the first of these great discourses just over the weeks past. We call it the Sermon on the Mount. In those chapters 5 to 7 of Matthew's Gospel, we heard Jesus' teaching, what many call the gospel within the gospel, presented to us. And these discourses are often prepared for by what is called a narrative, a chapter or two that kind of shows Jesus not just preaching the good news, but bringing it about, doing the good news. And we are just at the end of this second narrative, which leads us to the second discourse, which we will listen to tomorrow. This closing words of our gospel today sound like a summary, because in fact the way St. Matthew has laid out the gospel, it is a summary. What Jesus has done in chapters 8 and 9, has been a long list of powerful events. They have been principally accounts of Jesus's merciful deeds as he has set demoniacs free, as he has healed the sick, the paralytic, has even raised a little girl. He has done these great deeds of mercy. But this collection is really much more than just a collection of healing stories. It really is, as I said, a presentation of the heart of our Lord. For the first time, the disciples have gotten insight into what is at the very core of Jesus. Yes, they've seen his mighty deeds. They have pondered and wondered, who is this that even the forces of nature respond to him? All of this is dawning upon them. But like I said, the heart of our Lord is being shown to them. And they are beginning, by no means ended yet, only beginning to have their hearts attuned to his heart. This insight into our Lord's compassion, of course, is powerfully presented there as Jesus looking upon the crowds to whom he is ministering and is moved with the deepest kind of compassion. It comes from the very core of his person, from his bowels. That expression, is that deep movement that shows our Lord's great concern. It isn't just that they are like sheep without a shepherd, although anyone coming from such a place understands that that's dangerous for the sheep. Sheep need that protection, they need that guidance, they need that help. But they themselves feel abandoned. For many of those to whom Jesus ministers in Galilee, they're not Pharisees. Remember, the Pharisees were a very small group of laymen who had given themselves wholeheartedly to following the law. But they had left behind the crowds, the vast majority, thinking them incapable of keeping up. So when Jesus looks upon these men and women, he understands that they need to know God's presence, his care, his love. And it's shown in all of the deeds that Jesus does.